So we've got Bob Kodzis. His goal in life is to increase the amount of fun, creativity, and sharing in the world. That's him. His company, Flight of Ideas, he works with the tiniest nonprofits up to major corporations like Walmart and NASA. He's a keynote speaker, facilitator, and life coach. He's also an artist, performer, teacher, husband, and dad, to name a few of the many things he is. He's also a friend. All right, and then we also have Mark Freid. He is the owner of Think Creative, an award-winning branding and marketing firm here in Orlando. He's an innovative thinker, Ironman runner, yeah, husband and dad. What he loves most is building teams, empowering individuals, and helping clients find their souls and go for their goals. We also have Avery Smith, design director at Intrepid Networks, a native Floridian like me. He is a Hayao Miyazaki film fan. Avery's goal is connecting design with the community. He plans UX and creates UI for web and mobile platforms utilized by public safety and first responders around the country. He's also an AIGA board member with me, and he's the social impact co-chair, and he helps organize the Changemaker program, which is a very important program in our community. And Darren McDaniel, last but not least, he is so awesome. His goal in life is to increase, I'm sorry, that's Bob's. He agrees, though. He's a strategist, a sociologist, educator, designer, TEDx Orlando, and Pachakucha speaker. I never had problems saying that until now. An entrepreneur. He's a course director for creative brand experience in the digital arts and design program right here at Full Sail University. Now, Bob is going to be the moderator for this, so I get to thankfully relinquish this microphone. Here go the guys talking about Parity and all that good stuff.
Yeah, give it up for Anna. All right, so we're really delighted to be here. We are excited to talk about parity, equality. We're here to talk about being allies. We actually had an interesting conversation a couple days ago about the concept of champion. And we agreed that we don't really want to be called champions. We want to be champions for the cause of equality. However, the concept of champion evokes someone needing to be saved. And we kind of felt like it was more of a partnership. We like the term ally more in that realm. These are amazing guys, and I'm really excited to have you hear who they are and how they think and how they're approaching these topics. So, we just got a nice introduction from Anna, but I'd like you guys just to tell us anything that you'd like this audience to know about you, and I'd like you to answer the question, why do you think that you were put on this panel today? And take this. Actually, I'm going to relinquish the mic and just use my voice. Raise your hand if you can't hear me. Okay, good.
Excuse me, I'm still getting over a little bit of a cold and flu, but I'm not contagious, I promise you. Well, the question is, I think the question we talked about starting with was, why are we up here, right? Mm-hmm. Why us, out of all the guys in our community who are doing awesome things? That was kind of the toughest question to answer. We had a long conversation about that, which was a lot of fun talking to everybody about. The only thing that I could really come up with as to why Anna called us, first of all, we're friends, so thank you. And Anna calls, I told the guys, I'm like, Anna calls and she asks a question, and I say yes before she even tells me what the question is, which is awesome. And truthfully, that's the way I live a lot of my life, is being surrounded by great people and knowing that they ask me to do cool things, and so I'm going to say yes before. That's a good way of kind of hedging this conversation. I think the reason that we were asked, or that I was asked specifically to be up here, one, because I think that people know that we run a company that's very much steeped in culture, and we put a lot of emphasis on that culture. But the reason I really think that I'm here is because I think that people know, the majority of my staff are women, and I think that people know I have some very strong women who are doing some really awesome things in our community, And so I think that there's the assumption that somehow we as a group, or I as the owner of the company, am doing something right in terms of facilitating all that awesomeness that exists within our team. The truth is, it just makes me super proud that the people on my team do these awesome things, and that gets some attention out there in the community. But I think that's probably why I was asked to be up here. Is that close to the right answer? That's one of the reasons. Okay, I'll try to think of the others.
So I'm an activist. I've been a part of the Organized Florida, the Climate Justice Committee, the Racial Justice Committee, and it's always been a passion of mine to use design as a tool of disruption in a good way, and also to bring to light causes that need more attention, which kind of plays into what Changemakers is, which is also an AIGA program where we get a handful of nonprofits and teams of creatives together to volunteer their time to make some sort of solution for these nonprofits. It could be a logo, it could be a campaign, or it could just be the experience of looking at their workflow with design thinking in mind. I enjoy volunteering my time and my design skills and stuff for all the nonprofits and people that are needing of it, and so that's always been a passion of mine.
Okay. Well, first off, as I told them, I'm a feminist or a womanist and an egalitarian male, a sociologist who's taught in a design program for 11 years. So bringing the sociology side of things, the social interactions and the inequalities and whatnot there, and a mindfulness of that into the classroom environment, and really thinking about collaborative processes and the challenges of overcoming inequalities within that arena. Probably, I don't know, that's the most of what I would think that I hear with these fine folks. So.
All right, thank you for that. Now yes, good. Give love when you feel like giving love. Don't ever hold back the love. So we got some interesting questions online. Anna had put out a question of what you would ask male allies. And so I'm going to start off with one of those questions, but we're going to open this up to you, because this is about you and your questions and your thoughts combined with what we've learned online. So, gentlemen, this is the question being put to you. What are you doing on a daily or regular basis to raise up women in your field? What actions are you taking? What behaviors are you supporting? What are you doing out there? And anyone of you can take that question first.
I always try to stay active within the creative community that we have here in Orlando. I think, Anna, you mentioned all the great meetups we have around town. There are a lot of design and UX meetups specifically for women and people of color. And when we're looking for people to bring onto our team and my job, I always make sure to look at those places first. And of course, from within our company, I help train a woman that works with me through like UX and UI design in hopes of getting her into a higher position as well.
Thank you. I think for me, the big thing with Think Creative and my big passion for the last 15 years or so has really been around organizational culture. And so when we talk about, the question specifically is about how we raise women up within our company. The truth is one of our core values is what we say is we ignite individual growth. And that's not specifically a gender thing, it's just I feel like, as the owner of a company and a company that's very kind of socially conscious, that we have, the way I describe it is that we have both an opportunity and an obligation to have impact on the people that we come in contact with. Now, the people that we come in contact with most regularly and most intimately is obviously our team. And so one of those places where I see opportunity is to help them, every individual on our team, to be the happiest, most fulfilled individual that they can be. And I am fortunate to be in a position where we can create what we call rituals and traditions around that. One of the things that we offer all of our team members is a 40-hour sabbatical every year, an opportunity for them to go take 1 week and pursue some goal, dream, area of interest, and come back and share it with the team. Again, that's not a gender-specific thing, but it's one of the ways that we help every individual on our team to be the best version of themselves that they can be. We also give everybody the opportunity to be a leader in some capacity within the team. Some of that is formal, some of that is informal. And the biggest thing on our team is just the level of communication. The communication that happens between me and every individual on our team, and the communication that is kind of fostered within the team itself. And one of the things that we talked about, and I know this is going to come up when we talk about, what do we call it, our Sherpa? I can't remember the term, our gender Sherpa.
Sherpas, yeah.
But the thing that I think is beautiful about our team is that we talk about everything. We talk, anybody who's been in our office knows, like, there's nothing off limits, and that's a really incredible thing because it's really very much a judgment-free zone. So it gives me the opportunity to say, to talk about things that I'm hearing out in the community and ask questions, and it gives me the opportunity to ask them about how everybody individually, how they feel about certain issues. Am I getting off topic? But
A little bit.
okay, but anyway, I just want to make the
We
point
tell the
that,
truth
like,
here.
a lot of this, how do we cultivate growth amongst the individuals on our team, women or men, is around having these really robust conversations and these open dialogue between us, so that we're able to kind of lift each other up and find opportunities to lift each other up.
Is it fair to say, Mark, that you don't treat men and women differently at all throughout those processes?
The way that I talk about it is that, all right, so the quote that I always use is Mike Krzyzewski, the Duke coach. He says, "Rules are for people who can't make decisions." I feel like my job as a leader within my company is not to make a blanket set of rules that everybody has to follow and everybody has to be treated the same way, but for me to look for opportunities to help every individual grow and be successful in the way that is right and appropriate for them. So truthfully, I don't know if there are any HR people in the room because they don't want to hear this, but I treat everybody differently. I treat every individual differently, and it has nothing to do with gender.
Yes. Good management.
Good leadership, I think. And I'm not saying, I'm just quoting. Acknowledging the difference between leadership and management.
Right.
But that is our core principle, is that what one person needs to thrive is different than what another person needs to thrive. And it's my responsibility every day to find that in that individual, to have that open conversation, dialogue, and then to do whatever I can to help that person grow, regardless.
I would argue that that's one of the reasons that Mark's team is so happy. Whenever I go in that environment, I'm not kidding you, it's a joyful environment. And I think that definitely contributes.
Yeah, it's fun.
Right? What about you, Darren?
All right, so I think at the core, it's about listening and being observant, being mindful, and I'm looking more at the individual interaction type situations. So as an educator, it's my duty to make sure that I'm helping model behavior that can then be carried out into the workplace and other social arenas, and that also extends to being a participant on in a department or in meetings, that I've got to realize that whole opportunity and obligation, and speak up when it feels like somebody is being bulldozed or what have you. So I think really that's the core of it, is like modeling the behavior and coaching people to rise to that same standard.
I actually have some experience in this as well, being a performer at SAC Comedy Lab and hearing certain things in our green room spoken by men that are clearly just offensive to normal human beings. And I say that, very offensive to the ladies in the room. Some of the men were oblivious to the fact that what was being said was obnoxious and rude, and had to actually coach the guy outside of that room because we had to put on a show. I didn't want to ruin the mojo in the room right then. And in order to say, don't bring that into our green room ever again. Talking to my level 1 students, I teach my level 1 female students how to compete and rock out with the male students, because if they don't have that extra coaching, they get walked on when they emerge into the improv world. So there's kind of both sides of that, from the top to the bottom, trying to find opportunities to keep it real and keep the opportunity open and keep the conversation open. in the process. So I want to ask one more question to these guys from our internet search, and then I'm going to put it right out to you folks. I want to know, gentlemen, Mark mentioned the concept of a gender Sherpa. One of the things that we discovered when we had a conversation together was that every one of us has a gender Sherpa or more. Okay, I have my wife and my daughters are my gender Sherpas. They are the ones who guide me through, sometimes kindly, sometimes less than kindly, but to teach me what I need to know in order to evolve the way I need to evolve to be a better ally. It's become more gentle over time because they know that I'm genuine in the pursuit, but without their help and guidance, I would not be as far along as I feel like I've come, and I have a distance to travel. We all do, but that's mine. So guys, tell us about your gender Sherpas. Call them out by name if you're willing to.
Well, I try to surround myself with gender Sherpas, and I'd say actually several of them are in this room right now. I think for me, it all goes back to my mother, because my mother went to law school in the late 70s, and I watched what she experienced both there and in her career afterward, and I would read Ms. Magazine when she had it back then. So I give everything back to her on that. But like I said, I try to surround myself with that kind of person, and I think I'm pretty successful in doing that.
I have to say my current gender Sherpa would be the lovely Naomi Barasa, who is my partner. And you guys got to meet her earlier, but she's going to school to become a social worker, and she always keeps me in the know of all the latest DSM and mental health things that are happening. And she's a good source of conversation when it comes to LGBTQ and different sort of gender relations. I'd also have to say my sister is a great source of inspiration. She was formerly a Radio City Rockette for about 5 years running, which is a very tough job. So she inspires me a lot, especially creatively. Growing up, she loved to dance, and she just kind of made it happen. So I think those are my two main sources today.
So I think I have to acknowledge that my wife is one of my gender Sherpas. I don't have to, but I'm going to acknowledge my wife is one of my gender Sherpas. Anna knows her. My 19-year-old daughter is one of my gender Sherpas, sometimes overtly and sometimes just me kind of thinking, all right, my daughter is a freshman in college and she's going to be entering the work world soon, and how would I want her to be treated? And obviously my sisters and my mother. But then I will tell you, again, just kind of going back to our office environment, a lot of you know Diane Levine, who's our associate creative director, has been on my team for 15 years and just is like family to me. What makes Diane, and she's not the only one in the office who does this, but what makes Diane my Sherpa, and this was where our conversation went the other day, is that I can ask her anything and she won't judge me. If I can ask her if a term is offensive. I can ask her if if something I saw was wrong, or I can spark a conversation about different things. And there's some very specific things that we talk about, and we can have this conversation without her. If I get something wrong, without her judging me and thinking I'm a horrible human being, but instead kind of nudging me back and explaining to me, or we can have this great conversation about it. That is like the most vital thing. Like it or not, I'm a 50-year-old white guy who grew up, hearing certain terms used and hearing certain, assumptions made and things like that. So some of that is just kind of, in who I am. And as much as I'm trying to evolve, and I think that I'm a good person, I think I try to do the right thing as much as I can, I need someone to gently tell me, hey, we don't say that anymore. And not in a judgment way, but just kind of let me know so that I can get better.
That is one of the things that came up when we were having this conversation as well, is that the manner in which we are approached to be corrected. Because if you want allies, you have to be friends. And to be friends, you have to be nice to each other, even when somebody does something really stupid. So that positive support that Mark was describing with his relationship with Diane, and I feel the same with my wife, I can say anything to her, and she will judge me actually quite a lot. But I've been married to her for a long time, so I accept that piece of it. So I would love to know what questions you brought into the room with you. What would you like to ask of this panel, please?
What is a Sherpa?
Sherpa it's from Nepal. They are the ones that guide you up Mount Everest. So a Sherpa is a guide. So sorry, we didn't make that clear. Please.
I remember when I was a kid, there was a campaign for sexual abuse in children, and it was on TV, and they would tell you, find someone that you trust and tell them. Have you guys thought of starting a Sherpa campaign where you open a call to women to be Sherpas in your workplace, so guys feel comfortable trusting that person and telling her or asking her to, to better yourselves as male coworkers?
I think that's a fascinating idea. Do any of you have you considered that in your lines of work? I think we really just
In the 4 days since we had this conversation,
right.
have we launched a campaign?
It's an emerging concept. Right. Yeah. Again, cool idea, but I don't think any of us have actually created a situation where we can say, here are the Sherpas. They won't beat you up when you screw up.
I think the big thing is what we're doing today, which is talking about it. Having these open conversations. I never think about it. I love Darren brought up the concept of modeling, which I think is huge. I mean, we need to be role models in our lives, and that role model doesn't mean that we do everything perfectly. It means that we're open and vulnerable, and people recognize that we're willing to change and listen. And so I think the biggest thing probably is that we start talking about this, having this conversation more. And part of it is for us too, all this conversation that's going on around gender issues and equity and equality and parity and all those different things, sometimes it's hard for us to hear. It's like, oh my God, am I a bad person? Have I been a bad person? And there's a lot of kind of self-doubt that's happening, I think, for a lot of us sometimes. Maybe
it's really hard to be privileged, people. It's really hard. It's a big, weighty thing that we have to tote around.
Well, the only reason I say that is just to make the point that the way that we're going to advance is by having these kind of dialogues and having this openness, allowing me to be vulnerable and expose my weaknesses without being judged or anything like that. It's my point is that it happens on both sides of the equation, and this is how we make that change happen.
Right on. You had a question? Did you have a question? Okay, please.
Thank you. I was just going to comment that AIGA has a great mentorship program, and I think that when connecting with the right person and encouraging women and people of color to kind of be in more of like the mentorship role is a really good thing. I'd also say that just showing someone that you work with, or we just talked about, who's our gender Sherpa, actually let them know that they're appreciated and how much effect they have, and just empowering them in their own lives could be, just a really beneficial thing to do in general.
Right on. You want to add something out, Darren?
Nope.
All right. All right, please.
Avery actually answered my question.
Oh.
My question was, how do you not let the knowledge of, your privilege, how do you not let that weight affect your work? We've got the privilege guilt, yuppie guilt. How do you not let the male guilt just weigh on you at work so that way you can be an effective, leader in your job or in your department? What is that like for you?
We actually kind of touched on this a few days ago, but I think it's important for everyone in there, whatever your station in life is, to recognize that everyone has privilege. It's a different type of privilege for everyone, but to leverage that privilege for everyone else. Or
Privilege,
if you want to shorten it. So I think, that's why it's good to volunteer. That's why it's good to, if you have a skill or a talent that you may charge a lot of money for, maybe consider, giving it away to something that you really believe in or a cause that you think could use more attention. And in that way, you can use some of that privilege to give back to those that may not have as strong of a voice. So.
I think one of the greatest deterrents to guilt is action. And that says you can sit there and feel sorry that you feel this way, or you can act in a way that will even things out or make things better. Because I think that's the only way to alleviate that guilt. Please, Jenny.
Okay, so I'm going to follow it up with a question. I'm really curious because I'm not a man.
Thank you for that clarification.
I don't identify as a man. How do you
I approach it the same way you would approach someone that has like a bad habit, where you don't want to be too aggressive that they will literally get dug in and be that much more refusing to change. But it is good to be assertive. So when it happens, it's like hey, that's not cool, or I don't appreciate that, and I don't think anyone else would. And just being honest with someone without attacking, I think, is probably the way I found most successful.
I very often attack, just so you know. I'm not proud of it, but the fact is, if I see someone being blatantly ignorant and blatantly sexist, I actually even laugh and say, "Are you kidding me? Are you really saying that here in this environment?" You know, and I don't mean to ridicule them, but I find I get indignant, I get irritated, especially when I know that people know better. And again, I think Avery's approach is better because, as I just said, we need to be gentle with each other and kind, but sometimes it's hard to cage all that up. What do you got, Darren?
So there's two kind of ways of thinking about it, and one is in the moment, and the other one is afterward. And I'm a processor, so it's hard for me to do as much in the moment because I'm thinking about, okay, how am I going to talk to this person later on? But if you can do it in the moment, it's more powerful, because what it does is it begins to shift the culture a little bit. So the more times people are called out for that kind of behavior, they're more likely to say, okay, I'm not going to do that because I know I'm going to get grief from Darren or anybody else. So I was talking to one of my gender Sherpas earlier today, and she was telling me about a model by a company called the Learning Plan, I think, but it's OTFD, so observe, think, feel, and desire. So you, in that moment, you observe something that didn't go well, like, hey, I observed that Maria didn't get a chance to finish her thought there. And I think that it's important that we all have a chance to be listened to. And I'm feeling uncomfortable going on with this meeting until she does get that chance. So my desire is that we come back to her and let her finish her thought.
Give us those letters again. Give us those four.
OTFD.
OTFD.
Yes.
Let's get some bumper stickers printed.
Right.
Again, it's a way to relate. It's a way to raise the topic. I like to also point out my doing it out in the open right there in the moment partially is designed so that the women in the room can witness that this is happening real time in front of everybody, because I feel like sometimes the conversations after the fact don't necessarily show the women in the room that they have allies and that it's been witnessed and acknowledged that this is wrong. So please take it, Avery.
I think you should change that last one from desire to do.
To do.
Fine with me.
To do. Right on. Thanks, Faith. Go ahead, Avery. You can do it. Okay. Other questions? Please, all the way up back, please.
I'm interested to know if there was like a moment or something that happened in your life where you were like it clicked that there was disparity between genders and races, like just anything. Like, was there a moment for you that you were like, yeah, okay, this isn't great. Maybe I want to be an ally.
I'd like to offer you just a real quick example from my life. At age 12, I was awakened from a sound sleep by my two older sisters. I have 4 sisters. And I was dragged up a long hallway in my house, and I had my butt dunked into the toilet with the seat up. And they said, "How do you like it?" It was a moment that I did not forget. I learned at that moment to put the toilet seat down. And I know it's a silly example, but the point is, at that moment, I realized I was being completely insensitive to 4 of the 6 kids in the house and my mom by doing this, and it made me go, okay, a wake-up call, right? So that was just a silly moment, but it was a moment that clearly there was a little twist, a little turn, and my wife has thanked both of them for the habit that they developed in me. So I was changed then. I'm sure their examples will be more eloquent. But what do you got, Mark?
I can't really think of a single moment. Like I said, I think my mom and dad were really good role models, and I think that obviously my sister, I have an older sister and a younger sister, so watching my older sister kind of precede me and be successful and be assertive and know herself, and I am talking about privilege. I'm a very fortunate person. I've had a lot of really positive male and female role models in my life, as well as couple role models in my life that I get to kind of draw upon, and they make me reflect. At the same time, I do, think back again, we kind of are who we are, and we're kind of a product of when we, kind of come up, and I can think back to, certain things I've heard people say along the way that I recognize as inappropriate today, and it's through, anyway, so I don't really have an instant, but I think I have a pretty good sense of right and wrong, and I think that I'm constantly trying to find opportunities to make again, for me to be the best person that I can be, to create a culture where everybody kind of sees that around them and can be the best person that they can be. That's the best way that I can put it. I can't think of a single moment. I certainly think back on certain things that I've witnessed and didn't take action, and kind of kick myself for not having taken action, or even things that I might have said or done in the past. And I think I should have known better, or I know better now. If I were me today at that point, I would have done things differently. But I think a lot of it for me is just kind of constant introspection and observation, and trying to figure out how to make things better all the time.
Yeah, I can't really pinpoint one example, but I can think of a lot of little small, I guess you call them microaggressions throughout my life, where I was made fun of for being too sensitive, or because I'd rather talk things out rather than fighting them out, and that was compared to how a woman would do things, and it didn't really make sense to me why that was only why is that only a woman thing? Shouldn't that be an everybody thing? And my mother tells me stories, when she was growing up, of terrible things happening to her, but I'm not really sure if that was because she was a woman or because she's black. So it's kind of a lot of things, I think, in not only my history but my family's history that shows there's obviously a disparity between how women and people of color are treated.
Well, I have to go back to my mama again on this one. And just I had an interesting childhood in the sense that my mother did go to law school when I was in 7th grade. My dad serviced appliances, and so it was a shift. In 3rd grade, yes. It was a shift in the typical gender dynamic roles from the beginning, and even my mom declaring that she was going to go to law school at that time made quite a few ripples, even within not my core family unit, but my grandparents and aunts and uncles. And I think really just having a full empathy for her, and just the time after time that people would say things and tell, it's her responsibility to deal with the kids, and why is your dad taking off work to take you places and all that. So really it's just an accumulation of that made it very evident that there's got to be some egalitarianism here, that is a true privilege that men can have it easier at home, we'll say.
I was expecting someone to say, so this is radioactive spider, and it just bit my finger. And that wasn't the story here. Okay, so here's what I'd like to do, because I know we're running short on time. I think we're about at 2 o'clock right now, and I don't want to run over, but I do want to ask this, because we had talked about this. We want to know from you, our fine audience, what do you need from your male allies? What do you need that you're not getting? What do you need more of that you are getting? What do you need us to stop doing that we're doing that might interfere with us helping you better? Please.
If you have friends that run HR departments, you should encourage them strongly directly to say, look at salaries in your company.
Salary was an issue that came up quite a bit online as well, because there's no excuse for salary disparity. There's no excuse for it if you have equal skills, same job. There needs to be some transparency put in there, but I appreciate that recommendation. What else do you need, ladies? What else do you need?
Amplification when you have a small voice.
Amplification when you have a small voice. I like how you just lowered that voice as you were finishing that sentence. Good. Okay, thank you. Please, what else? What else do you need? What else would you like to see? Please.
Lady brag, intentionally figure out a way every week to do lady brags and ask your bros to do it too.
Lady brags. Define that for us.
I read something in a business magazine. The CEO XYZ is doing this really cool thing. Read this.
This female.
This female.
Right on.
Specifically.
Okay.
them, and guys listen to other guys.
Fact. That was one of the other questions that people had offered too, is how do we talk to other guys outside of the presence of women? You know, if we're going to be allies, how are we talking to each other when you're not even in the room? And it was kind of interesting conversation.
Yeah, that was my thought during this whole thing. One of the most powerful things you can do is speaking up in the moment is amazing because it's different if it's coming from a man, not just because it's stronger, but because it's telling all the other guys that you aren't with them if they're saying something sexist.
And it's
But also men that I love have said, you know, during this political era, hearing people say, "Oh, that's regular locker room talk." Men I know say, "We never said that."
we are receiving such wonderful lessons right now, aren't we? It's like sometimes you learn based on what you should do, and sometimes you learn based on what you shouldn't do.
We have the perfect example.
Right, exactly. The whole dose. What else, ladies? What else would you like to see? Please.
I'd like to see more men supporting women-owned businesses.
Yeah.
I'm not doing this for a hobby.
Right, right. I love it. Okay. Spoken by a female CEO. Thank you. Please.
I think the most powerful thing that a man can think about is to unapologetically support females, artists, businesses, whatever, without the lens of, I'm a guy and I like this. Like, you know, having that precursor to, and I can't tell you how many times I've had, you know, the spouses of somebody come to a yoga class and is like, I'm so years old. I like this yoga class. It's like, well,
Don't qualify it,
yeah,
right?
but the thinking of things through the lens of your maleness isn't very helpful in this.
Yeah.
So, you know, the personal shift.
I get that. I hope you all understand, too, that it's really difficult to not look through your gender lens sometimes. I mean, and I'm not saying it shouldn't be changed, but I think it's a habit that needs to be changed.
Right.
And you know, how many of you are great at changing habits? No, me either. Okay. Other things that you need before we wrap this up, gentlemen. Other things that you would like to share with this audience related to the challenges of being an ally, or a story from your successes, or anything.
I just want to build on the comment that you made about the locker room talk thing. What's interesting is, again, I run a relatively small company, so we kind of get away with things maybe that larger companies with very strong HR departments would kind of frown upon. But like, there are these, you know, you're talking about like obvious things when men say things that they shouldn't say, or obviously sexist things. But there are also these kind of examples that come up in society in general, and honestly, most of those things make it into our conversation in the office, which I love. So, you know, we get to have that conversation, and I get to say things like, can you believe that he thought that, you know, defining that as locker room talk was an excuse for that boorish behavior, and I get to have that conversation in there. So there are these kind of neat opportunities to bring that conversation out into the open. But I think the most important thing is that the conversation and the dialogue becomes normal and natural, that we talk about these things rather than just when there's an affront or just when there's an issue. I would much rather just be kind of this consistent current of having open dialogue about things, and again, this kind of judgment-free dialogue where I get to share my ideas and they share their ideas, and I'm not feeling like I'm being attacked if I have a thing that I'm not quite sure about. And instead, we get to all grow together. And that's the best way that I can put it. I mean, it's so much less about looking to identify the wrong and so much more about just having these wonderful, deep, rich conversations all the time, so that we get used to talking about, you know, maybe difficult issues, so that we can all grow together.
Yeah, and I think that you know, one thing that we can re-examine is this whole idea of like the lone male CEO archetype or the lone leader. Like I think it's very prevalent in like Wall Street and Silicon Valley and things like that, where someone is just like an uber genius and pounds on the table the hardest and yells the loudest, and that means that they must know what they're doing. But I think that we need to re-examine that and recontextualize to really to hold up collaboration as being like a really beneficial thing, and not just doing everything on your own and getting all the credit. And I think that would go a long way.
So when I recently did a collaboration workshop, and the group spent maybe 5 or 10 minutes on something, and there were 4 people in each group, and at the end of the time, I'd ask them about how the time was allocated. Like, did one person speak 80% of the time and the other 3 spoke 20 or whatnot? And it was just really enlightening for them to think about that. And I think a lot about the whole extrovert-introvert dynamic too, and it's somewhat tied to what we're talking about today. And so I would just say that when you all are in your collaborative arenas, and whether it's a gender dynamic or an introvert-extrovert dynamic or any of a number of other ones, to be mindful of that inequality and see what you can do to not just have your voice heard more, but to pull some other voices in to get their fair share, so to speak.
Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us. Mark Freid, Avery Smith, Darren McDaniel. I'm Bob Kodzis. Thank you all for participating in this. Thank you, Anna, for asking us to come.